Motshekga says her department may consider opening virtual high schools in future, and the man found guilty in New Zealand of helping his terminally ill mother die is to approach South Africa's parliament for a law which will allow for assisted suicide in limited circumstances. Ambosisi Khadeb with the latest news update. Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga says her department may consider opening virtual high schools in future. A virtual school allows distant learners to be taught via online methods instead of being physically in a classroom. The minister was responding to a parliamentary question from COPE MP Smuts Ngonyama. Mercedes Besent reports.
Ngonyama wanted to know whether the department is keeping abreast of the developments of virtual schools across the world. He also wanted to know whether Motshekga intends implementing a model similar to the Uruguayan Basic Information Educational Program for online learning. But Motshekga says the South African Schools Act makes provision for public and independent schools. She says the Act does not make provision for online schools, their establishment, neither are there current regulations governing online schools. She says although South Africa is not considering the virtual model at this stage, her department may consider it in future. Mercedes Besent, SABC News, Parliament.
The Human Sciences Research Council has slammed the ANC's policy of cadre deployment, saying it adversely affects public services. The HSRC says the ANC's deployment strategy systematically places loyalty ahead of merit and competence. HSRC researcher Modimo Wabara Kanyane says politically connected, incompetent people are often deployed to public positions, which leads to a demoralized public service. He says competency and ethical standards are critical for an effective public service. Kanyane says managers with the relevant skills only constitute 0.4% of the country's public servants. South Africa's manufacturing output grew by 4.2% year-on-year in May. Statistics say the figure is far above expectations after rising by 1.1% in April. The median consensus among economists polled by Reuters was for factory output to grow by 1% in May. On a month-on-month basis, production rose by 2.7%. And lastly, the man found guilty in New Zealand of helping his terminally ill mother die is to approach South Africa's parliament for a law which will allow for assisted suicide in limited circumstances. Professor Sean Davison was sentenced to 5 months of house arrest and only recently returned to South Africa. Addressing Cape Town's Press Club, he said assisted suicide should be an option for a terminally ill patient who was still of sound mind.
In countries where they have the option of legal assisted dying, the number of elderly suicides drops dramatically. It implies that a person, knowing they've got the option of a guaranteed death, will live until the very end. Putting it into my mother's situation, if she knew she could go to a clinic and have assisted dying, she wouldn't have gone on a hunger strike. And she would have lived as long as possible and probably died a natural death.
Catch the latest news anytime here on Newsbreak, Option 1.